Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're continuing on Our King. If you are reading along with me, we're picking up on page 240. We're in chapter 18, Grandpa Wales. Okay, so where we left off, they had the Sandringham Summit. They've already moved to California. And at this point, it was Valentine's Day 2021. They had just announced they were expecting Lilibet. Okay, the Queen and Charles and William publicly congratulated them. Then they dropped the bombshell, confirming that they had agreed to be interviewed by Oprah. We know how that goes. Of course, the announcement came just as the Duke of Edinburgh was being admitted to the hospital in central London for what was about to be his last fight. Unfortunately, he ended up passing away within weeks at aged 99. Okay, 19th of February, when Harry and Meghan's departure deal was confirmed, it left the prince in no doubt that he had been cut adrift. So he and the wife, I call her that because you guys are so funny in the comments and call her that, he and TW were stripped of their patronages, and Harry, a proud military man, had several honorary titles removed as well, including Captain General of the Royal Marines. Okay. So then, as a cheap shot, they decided to release another statement in which they said they, quote, offered their continued support to the organizations they had represented regardless of official role. Of course, they ended that statement with just a jackass thing to say, saying service is universal. That was their way of taking a swipe back at the Queen, Charles, and William. And I ask you now, how's that working out for you? They're investigating Archwell. Doesn't sound like much service is going on 1 hour a week. Harry, of course, is all about himself and that wife and seemed unconcerned that the Queen and his father would be caught in the crossfire. So then he decided to go on late night with James Corden because they're all as obnoxious as each other, claiming that he, quote, stepped back, not away, because his mental health was being, quote, destroyed, and insisted that his, quote, life is public service. Okay. All right. Again, 1 hour a week. Yeah. Public service. Yeah. Potentially, allegedly fraudulent things going on over at Archwell. Okay. Sure. I just, nothing they say is true ever. So why would that be true? Right. So then the trailer for Harry and Meghan's Oprah interview was packed full of jaw-dropping sound bites. In one, Harry says his biggest fear was, quote, history would repeat itself, a reference to, of course, what happened with Diana. Then in another, Oprah asked Meghan how she felt knowing that the royal family would be hearing her speak out about them. Meghan's answer, quote, I don't know how they could expect that after all this time, we would still just be silent when there's an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us. They never take accountability. Everything is always somebody else's fault, including here. She continues to say, and if that comes with the risk of losing things, well, that there's been a lot lost already. Like what, you crazy bitch? She's so full of shit. It just makes me so mad to think, again, of the hell that they both put the Queen through and everybody else. And then all the lies in that interview. No. And then Oprah, again, can't take any responsibility after the fact to admit that everything was bullshit. And it's not in her best interest to fact check these two because they're all making money off each other. They're the worst. See, this is why I continue to make videos like this. Okay. Then, of course, famously, she went on to say that Archie, their mixed-race son, was not given a princely title due to the color of his skin. Whew. Now, I went over and over why this is not true. We all know this is not true. This is just more bullshit that they were peddling. Oprah did not ask Meghan to back up any of the claims because, again, you know, money's more fun than questioning things, even if you're supposed to be a journalist. Harry eventually appeared in the hot seat, although, I don't know, he was just kind of there eating crayons. He contradicted his wife about the timing of the so-called racist comment. Now, I did go into this further. I believe it was in the Revenge and in the Cordia's breakdown, so definitely go check those out. But again, Jobson's going into the same thing that they contradicted each other throughout, and especially when it came to these alleged racist claims. So after the interview, all kinds of accusations were flying against specific members of the family. Harry ruled out his grandmother, the Queen, and his seriously ill grandfather, Prince Philip. But the furor over the racist claims and the royals, they had a devastating impact on the monarchy. I would like to take this opportunity to say, the only one that has shown racist behavior in the past publicly was Harry. But lest we not forget that, right? He likes to blame William and Catherine for that. It's their fault because he dressed up the way he did, and of course filmed himself making a racist remark to his fellow Sandhurst cadet from Pakistan. But that's beside the point if you ask them. God, they love to throw around the accusations, but yeah, can't face their own music. Okay, so I explain it every time, but just in case, Jobson's point of view with this book is to see how things affected Charles. So he points to the part in the Oprah interview which echoes Diana's BBC Panorama interview, where Diana suggested that Charles was not suited as top job as king. Harry claimed that William and Charles were both, quote, trapped by their roles, explaining, quote, I was trapped, but I didn't know I was trapped. Like, he doesn't know anything. Like the rest of my family are. My father, my brother. I wish Jay was here to do the Harry voice. They're trapped. They don't get to leave. And I have huge compassion for that. You guys, he just loves to throw them under the bus. He's making it seem like they have I say this all the time. He's a passenger in his own life. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. He acts like things just happen to him. And he's trying to paint that narrative on William and Charles. We see Meghan do the same thing all the time. So then Jobson goes on to explain that Harry's comments, of course, cut Charles and William. They were deeply upset by Harry's arrogance. Yes, exactly that. Furious that he had the audacity to speak about their feelings. They were both deeply disappointed in him. He had no right or authority to speak on their behalf, said a senior royal household source. So according to Jobson, in the aftermath of the Oprah interview, William went to Charles and told him that the royal family needed a clear strategy in dealing with Hank and Skank, the renegade royals, as Jobson calls them. He became a key figure in the ongoing conversations between Queen and Charles on how to counter the, quote, groundless verbal attacks. Of course, I had to take a deep breath there just because it just makes me so nauseous to think of what he was putting everybody through again when the Duke of Edinburgh was passing away and, the Queen just dealing with everything. Anyway, okay, sorry, take a deep breath. Of course, Her Majesty would have the final say, but she needed Charles and William to guide her. What concerned both Charles and William was Harry's total lack of discretion. Neither felt they could fully trust him again, and they decided not to meet with him alone in future. Excellent choice. And again, this is coming out after the Oprah interview, but before he released Spare. So again, I ask you, Charles, what are you thinking? You need to axe that invite to Coronation. That's my thought. Okay. The first test of trust came in 2021 when the two brothers were reunited for the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. 17th of April. Tensions were running high between them at the funeral ceremony in Windsor Castle, which Harry attended without his Instagram-loving bitch wife. I'm going to sneak that in as much as I can because I love it. If you're like, what are you talking about? That's from South Park. That's what they called her, and I love it. Okay, so it was Peter Phillips who walked between them as they followed their grandfather's coffin. After the service at St. George's Chapel, Catherine appeared to try acting as peacemaker, but there was just no great reconciliation. Almost 3 months later, Harry returned for the unveiling of the statue of their mother at Kensington Palace on what would have been Diana's 60th birthday. It was the 1st of July, 2021. The brothers then posted a joint statement saying, "Today, on what would have been our mother's 60th birthday, we remember her love, her strength, and character, qualities that make her a force for good around the world, changing countless lives for the better." But again, the author points to that neither were inclined to engage in any meaningful conversation. Harry made no attempts at a rapprochement with his father. He returned to Meghan in Montecito, California. Of course, he had a book to write. Under no illusions, he was now an outsider. If anything, the cold shoulder he received from his father and brother only strengthened his resolve. Okay, so then we go into chapter 19, Last Farewells. I've been trying to stick to the Harry Meghan stuff, but I just want to read you this little part because, I don't know, I just really enjoyed reading it. Okay, so it sounds like the Duke of Edinburgh, he had left hospital care March 16th, 2021. He had been in for 28 days, his longest ever hospital stay. He was in a wheelchair. He was 99, very frail. But he made it clear to his medical team and to Charles, who had visited him in the hospital, that he wanted to return to live out his final days at Windsor Castle. He approached his 100th birthday. Prince Philip admitted to those around him that life had finally caught up with him, and gone was the old gusto that drove him on. In his last conversation with Charles, hours before he died, the Duke retained his blunt sense of humor. I thought this was funny, when Charles told his father, quote, "We're talking about your birthday," he had to repeat himself and speak louder as Philip now was going deaf. "We're talking about your birthday and whether it's going to be a reception." Philip replied, "Well, I've got to be alive for it, haven't I?" Charles said, "I knew you'd say that." But unfortunately, of course, his father did pass away a few hours later at Windsor Castle, the 9th of April 2021. I just like the little anecdotes like that I wasn't aware of. I like learning about their sense of humor, and it does point to basically as the Duke of Edinburgh had aged, it strengthened his relationship with Charles. They found much more common ground, and Robert Jobson explains, well, they had both mellowed. Okay, so then after the funeral, Jobson goes into, well, I'm just going to read this part to you so it makes sense and transition us. The prince had his own issues, of course, prince at the time, as a father to contend with. In his book Spare, Harry reveals that after the funeral, Charles stood between his two warring sons and pleaded with them, quote, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." I'm interrupting again to say, again, Harry is sharing private conversations at his grandfather's funeral of his father pleading with him to try to make amends or try to start talking again to William and to himself. And of course, Harry uses it as fodder to sell books. Okay, the meeting between them in the garden of Frogmore Cottage at Windsor was short and, quote, painfully tepid, recalls Harry, who admits he was nervous and, quote, fighting to keep his emotions in check as he tried to explain his side of things. Harry was itching to speak to his father, but felt that Charles and his brother William had come, quote, ready for a fight. Of course, this is all, I'm stepping back and saying this is Jobson writing from bits of Spare. We've read Spare, so I'm going to skim over this because I just don't believe anything that Harry put in there. And even if a morsel of it is true, he's using stuff that he had no right to use. I don't think it was his story to tell. This part talking about what Charles said to him at the funeral. So basically they reached an impasse. Charles wanted time to grieve alone and headed to a sanctuary. It's his Welsh home adapted from a former model farm. I can never say these Welsh places. But anyway, it's his farm in Wales. And he wanted to answer letters of condolence. Yet again, Harry returned to the USA, having effectively been given the cold shoulder by his close family. I see even that Jobson said that. I'm saying it sounds like they tried and Harry was being a prick as per usual. Charles wrote that his father's death marked the end of an era and that Prince Philip would greatly be missed by so many people in the UK and around the world. He was touched by the outpouring of love for Philip after his, quote, memorable lifetime was over. But Jobson explained Charles had been effectively the head of the royal family for some time. With the decline in the Duke of Edinburgh's health and his retirement from public life, the Queen turned to Charles more and more, not only to take her place when she was unable to carry out specific engagements, but also for advice. Whenever he was due to host at Windsor Castle, Charles arranged to stay the night there and have dinner with his mother instead of returning to Highgrove in Gloucestershire. He appreciated that his mother was also nearing the end of her life, and he wanted to be there for her. Charles, now fully prepared for the top job, understood that when it came, it would mean any overt lobbying would have to be sacrificed. As the time of his reign as monarch approached, he increasingly used his position as statesman to influence the influencers. Around this time, Elizabeth became the first British monarch in history to mark her Platinum Jubilee. It fell on Charles as her liegeman to lead the celebrations. Frail and, as it's understood, stricken with a form of myeloma, in parentheses it says bone marrow cancer, Queen Elizabeth did her very best to avoid letting anyone down, but she increasingly had to rely on her son and heir to take the lead. Okay, so then the Queen had been locked in discussions with William and Charles about what to do about Harry. That's the ongoing question. Queen Elizabeth at first was mystified by Harry and Meghan's behavior. She described it as, quote, quite mad, and said, that's a very polite way of putting it, recollections may vary, right? And said that she believed Harry was, quote, so consumed by his love for his wife that it was clouding his judgment. Again, she's very polite in the way she's handling it. I'm saying they're both full of shit. In fact, the Queen had also admitted, I thought this was super interesting. Okay. She admitted to someone in her close circle that when Meghan was introduced, the Queen did not fully appreciate Meghan's heritage as a, quote, biracial woman because she had not been briefed. So apparently Megsy Poo didn't feel like it was important at that point, but now has decided to let everybody know how important it is and that she brief everybody. So not that it would have caused her any concern whatsoever, the impeccable household source added, Her late Majesty was the oldest, longest reigning, most traveled British monarch ever. She met and forged friendships with men and women of all faiths and different ethnicities and colors as her role as head of the Commonwealth. But the Queen felt very let down by the Sussexes. She was not only disappointed in Harry's decision to abandon his royal duty, but also saw their departure as a missed opportunity, like we've all been saying. She was wearied by the volatile exchanges during which Harry claimed it had been, quote, terrifying to have William, quote, scream and shout at him, think dog bowl, and his father lie in front of the Queen. He also spoke of the wedge between him and William and being disappointed that his brother was, quote, now on the institution's side. When stories appeared in the press about William allegedly treating Meghan badly and, quote, bullying her, bullshit, the palace released a joint statement from both princes denying the claims. That's where we get that stupid, within 4 hours, they were happy to lie to protect my brother, and yet for 3 years, they were never willing to tell the truth to protect us. What are you talking about? You're so full of shit. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it here, guys, because we still have lots more to go, and I hate them. And yeah, that's a good place to end it. But thank you so much, as always, for watching and supporting. I just really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're here. And just thank you for everything, all the lovely comments. I really appreciate it. If you want to further support the show, I do encourage you to check out my Patreon. I do a lot of extra content over there, deep dives, lots of fun stuff. I even cover episodes of Sex and the City if that's your jam, but a lot of Harry and Meghan stuff. So check that out. It's patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. That's where you can become an executive producer. I'd like to thank my executive producers so much for all the support. So I'm going to read your names, and if you want to become one, check it out on patreon.com. Thank you to Linda and Melissa. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. K. Thank you to Kay. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you to Aaron and Frank. Thank you to Kristen. Thank you to Ann M. Thank you to Amanda. Thank you, Ann H. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Glennis. Thank you to Karen. Thank you to Dewey. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adair Becker. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Barb G. Thank you, Diana, LOL. Thank you, Allison B. Thank you to Jean. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, KT. Thank you, Jolene. Thank you, Stromboli. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Loie. Thank you, Lucy H. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you to Robin's Landing. Thank you to Helen. Thank you to Maura. Thank you to Ashley C. Thank you to Molly. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Sandsquid. Thank you to Rach. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Domby. Thank you, Android P. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Aaron M. And thank you to Faye. So if you would like your name shouted out and as an executive producer, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Can't wait to bring you the next part of Spare Us. Take care. Bye-bye.